Which players have risen the most in dynasty value over the last month? We are talking about that in today's video. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate all of your guys' support. If you're new to the channel, I make these videos around the first of every single month. I am recording this a little bit earlier, August 28th. Have some plans this weekend, but you will be seeing it close to the 1st of September. Football season is here, and I think it's very important for us dynasty players to keep tabs on the market. So I make one of these videos every month showing you dynasty risers and another video showing you dynasty fallers, just so you can get a feel for, you know, who we are overreacting to, who we are overinflating, who we are properly moving up, and things like that, so that you can capitalize on value either by selling high or buying low. As always, we're going to start with the quarterbacks here, and we're going to talk about Bo Nix. Quarterbacks generally are a little bit more stable position. You don't see a lot of movement with the quarterback position. Bo Nix moving up 5 spots is pretty significant considering he was already a top 24 quarterback. So you can only move up so much. He moves up 5 spots to QB 19, which I think is significant. You know, I think it's deservedly so. He looked really good in preseason. Now, are we moving him up because he got the starting job, or are we moving him up because he looked good in preseason? If we're doing it because he got the starting job, well, then, you know, we should have been ranking him here all along, right? Because we knew he was going to get that starting job. If you're doing it because he looked good in preseason, sure, because he did. He did look good. I would temper expectations. It's still a rookie quarterback. It was preseason. And we're going to have to just temper expectations a little bit. Now, I'm glad he's with Sean Payton. I do think that Sean Payton is going to put him in the best situation possible, but there's not a lot of weapons on that team, which worries me a little bit. So temper expectations for Bo Nix. Can he be a low-end QB2? I think he can, for sure. Joe Milton, moving up from QB 50 to QB 40, so 10 spots there. And I get it. Joe Milton, he's fun. He comes in. You know, he's playing against third stringers. He comes in, he has a huge arm. He can run the ball. He's a fun player, man. Like these guys are going to rise up just because they're fun to watch and they put up the highlight reels. I have big concerns with whether Joe Milton can actually play consistently the quarterback position. But that being said, I get why he's here. I just want to say he's going to be the QB3 for the Patriots. They're not starting him over Drake May. They're not going to bench Drake May for Joe Milton because that would just kill Drake May's confidence. At least not year one. It's going to be Drake May or Brissett starting, and then the other guy is going to be QB2. So even in Superflex, it's tough. It's really tough to hang on to QB3s. So you're going to be, when injuries start hitting your team in week 4 or 5, you're going to be looking at Joe Milton and being like, sorry, got to cut you, even if it is Superflex. That being said, he's an exciting player. And if he does get a starting chance, he has the fantasy cheat code, right? In that he can run the ball. The last 2 here are very intriguing to me. Skylar Thompson from QB 81 to 64. He is the QB2 for the Miami Dolphins. They cut Mike White. And I'm pretty sure they didn't sign him to the practice squad. Maybe they did, and I missed that. But they cut Mike White, and they're rolling with Tua and Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson, if you remember, he started a playoff game for this team. He had to come in when Tua had his injury issues a couple years ago. The team likes Skylar Thompson. I can tell you that. The team likes him. He's been on the team for 3 years. They just promoted him from QB3 to QB2 over Mike White. If something happens to Tua, and in Superflex leagues, almost all QB2s, in my opinion, should be rostered. If something were to happen to Tua, I fully expect Skylar Thompson to come in and just put up like a decent number in terms of fantasy. You know, he has the weapons, he has the offensive system, and we've seen over the years that offensive systems are sometimes more important than the actual quarterback themselves. If you have Patrick Mahomes, of course, Patrick Mahomes is amazing. But we've seen, you know, guys go into the Rams system, the Viking system, the Dolphin system, and they change because of the system itself. And so Skylar Thompson, man, he should be rostered 100% because Tua, you know, coming into last year, we were concerned about Tua's health. And if he gets the opportunity, he's going to put up a solid flow. I'm not saying he's going to win you leagues, but he'll be a solid QB3 in my opinion. And Nick Mullens is another one. With J.J. McCarthy getting hurt, Nick Mullens is back to being the QB2 for the Vikings. And there's a handful of QB2s out there that can become the starter without an injury. Daniel Jones, maybe Geno Smith. And Sam Darnold's another one where these QB1s, like, they could just get benched because they're not good, right? Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, they're the ones that come to mind. Nick Mullens, he's a QB2. Usually QB2s only get a chance if their quarterback one gets hurt. Not for Nick Mullens, in my opinion. We saw Nick Mullens last year, guys. Nick Mullens last year, I think he started like 4 games or something like that. I'm just gonna double check his finishes. Nick Mullens was like awesome last year. He was QB 11 in week 15, so he took over week 15 as the starter. QB 11, QB 11 again in week 16. He wasn't very good in week 17, and then week 18 he was QB 5. Literally 3 of his 4 starts he was a top 12 quarterback because of the offensive system, and you get to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, and Jordan Addison. Nick Mullens is another one, just like Skylar Thompson. He definitely should be rostered. On to the running backs. We have a lot of movement here, guys. Some guys at the top that are moving. Brian Robinson has moved from 5 spots, but again, 5 spots is significant when you're already a top 30 running back. From QB 28 to 23, man, I don't know what to feel with Brian Robinson this year. And you know, he's definitely in the running back. He's in that running back area where I don't look beyond the coming year. Brian Robinson, I'm not penciling in 2025 or 2026. He's in that, what can he do for me for 2024 group, which a lot of running backs should be, and people foolishly don't rank running backs that way. I get the feeling that he's ranked a little bit too high, that I would maybe sell high on him if I could, even if I'm competing. I think there's a misnomer that, if you're a competing team, you can never, sell guys that are going to contribute to your team. That's not true. That's how you stay a dynasty. That's how you stay good for year after year after year, is making those moves. Brian Robinson, to me, feels like a sell high. I'm just concerned that he's going to be a between the 20s guy. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll use him at the goal line, but I think it's easy to think, Brian Robinson's the goal line back. But Austin Eckler, he had a 2-year stretch before he, did not look that great last year. He had a 2-year stretch, guys, of rushing for 25 touchdowns. Austin Eckler knows how to score, and he had a 2-year stretch of putting up almost 40 touchdowns in 2 years. The guy knows how to score, and he might be more valuable in the red zone. Austin Eckler's obviously going to catch more passes. I'm just worried that Brian Robinson turns into like a 15-carry, 70-yard back, and if he doesn't get a touchdown, you're extremely disappointed. So I feel like selling high on him right now. If I can tear down and get someone else that's, ranked 10, 15 spots behind him that I still think can contribute this year, and I get a piece on top of it, I'm absolutely going to do it. Just some examples here. A guy like Tony Pollard is ranked 10 spots lower than Brian Robinson. If I can get Tony Pollard and like a 3rd-round pick, please give it to me. Jerome Ford's another guy, and Jerome Ford's rising as well. But, those guys, I could see Jerome Ford being better than Brian Robinson. I could see Pollard being better than Brian Robinson, and I get a piece on top. David Montgomery has moved up 4 spots from RB24 to RB20. That's mostly because of the Jahmyr Gibbs potential injury. Yeah, Montgomery's going to be good this year. Whether Jahmyr Gibbs is healthy, Montgomery is, besides Derrick Henry, he's one of the few players that you might be able to pencil in for 10 rushing touchdowns. So not much to say here. He's moved up because of the Jahmyr Gibbs injury. Chase Brown is another one guy that's moved up from 35 to 28. This is another guy where I like Chase Brown. I just don't know. Are the Bengals I don't think they're just going to give it all to Chase Brown, first of all. I think best case scenario is like a 60-40 split, in my opinion. Maybe some people think it's closer to 50-50, but I think it's closer to a 60-40 split at best. Zach Taylor and this iteration of the Bengals have always been heavy on one running back, Joe Mixon, right? 65, 70% of the time. I just don't know if I see Chase Brown as really taking 50-50 from Moss. And the biggest thing is Zach Moss, he's proven in terms of what he did last year, and he can pass block. And that's a big, big thing. He can pass block and protect Burrow, and that's going to get Zach Moss on the field. So Chase Brown, I'm kind of okay with where he's at because there's potential there on a really good offense. If he does get the keys to the car he's going to be a poor man's Joe Mixon. He's going to be a top 20 running back. But I'm not convinced that he is going to get, just the full backfield. So, and then some lower guys lower down the list. Carson Steele has obviously made a huge jump from RB29 to RB64. No one saw this coming. I didn't hear anyone talking about Carson Steele in the offseason or in the pre-draft season. And really, it's only been like, it's usually you get guys that are like from the start of training camp stand out. Carson Steele has been like the last week or so, the last week to 10 days is like, oh crap, like Carson Steele. And then Generic Prince is the one I thought and many people thought was rising up and the dynasty guy to stash, and it was Carson Steele. So I'm sure, yeah, stash the guy. I mean, he's the RB3 right now for the Chiefs. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going through some PTSD stuff. Hopefully he figures that stuff out, and I'm not sure what's wrong. Now, they just did sign Samaje Perine, the Chiefs, so that does put a little, it puts a little water on, extinguishes the flame a little bit for Carson Steele, because now he may be more of just a special teams guy and an emergency running back. But sure, if you can stash him, stash him. Now, a guy that I'm a little bit more interested, I think, is Emanuel Wilson. And the reason being is for a couple reasons. One, A.J. Dillon got put on season-ending IR, so he's not going to be on this team. Marshawn Lloyd was rumored to be going to be put on the IR, missed it. He avoided it, so he's not going to be put on IR. That being said, he can't be healthy, right? If they were considering him and the news came out like, oh, he's going to go to the IR. A lot of people thought he was. If he was going to go to the IR, he can't be healthy, at least for the first couple of weeks, I would assume, right? Emanuel Wilson's been on the Packers since 2023, so he played there last year, I believe. Maybe he's been on there longer, but I think he actually got some carries last year and stuff like that. He was a 2023 undrafted rookie. He's a big back. He's 5'11", 226. So he reminds me a little bit of, like, in terms of the build, A.J. Dillon. And right now, guys, especially if Marshawn Lloyd misses a couple weeks, and by the way, can't hold on to the ball, he has a fumbling issue, and I guarantee you they're not going to give the ball to their Marshawn Lloyd if he can't hold on to the ball. They will bring in Emanuel Wilson. And the other thing is Matt LaFleur loves a two running back system. Absolutely love it. Matt LaFleur was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans back in 2018. And in 2018, he had a 24-year-old Derrick Henry. Matt LaFleur did. A 24-year-old Derrick Henry. You know what Matt LaFleur did that year with a 24-year-old prime Derrick Henry? He gave Dion Lewis, a 28-year-old guy who never really did much in the league. He was a solid player, but he wasn't like this amazing running back. His best season up until that point was 900 yards rushing. He gave Dion Lewis 155 carries and 59 catches with almost 70 targets. He literally gave 215 touches to Dion Lewis and 230 to a prime Derrick Henry, 24 years old, who, by the way, from that point on, Derrick Henry, from that point on, became the Derrick Henry that we know. So Matt LaFleur wants a two running back system. I think to start the year, it's going to be Emanuel Wilson and Josh Jacobs. It's either all Josh Jacobs and Matt LaFleur changes his philosophy, or it's Emanuel Wilson kind of playing the A.J. Dillon role. And there's some potential value there, especially if he's better than A.J. Dillon. So keep an eye on Emanuel Wilson. I'm curious to see him and what he does. Jordan Mason, obviously, he's risen a lot from 101 to 55. Only thing I'll say on Jordan Mason is, yes, he is the RB2 behind the San Francisco, behind CMC. That being said, I'm not convinced that if something happens to CMC that they just like give, I don't know if he's a true handcuff in the sense of if the RB1 gets hurt, RB2 will take on 80% of what RB1 was doing. I don't know if that's true. They might mix in multiple guys. They might sign a guy or something. They might bring in someone off the street to run with them. There's a lot of things they might do. So don't necessarily, do I think Jordan Mason should be rostered? Of course. Do I think he should be valued here? Yeah, probably. But just don't make the mistake of thinking you have the true handcuff to Christian McCaffrey. Maybe you can sell them to the McCaffrey manager, for more than you'd get from anyone else, with under the guise of like, oh yeah, he is going to be the handcuff to Christian McCaffrey. Sione Vaki is an interesting one. He was a two-way player, enlisted as like a safety running back. Looks like he's going to be a running back for the Lions. And the only thing I will say is I definitely want to roster. There's some teams where I 100% want to roster like every running back that's on their starting roster. Miami is one of them. The Lions are another one. These teams that are going to run the hell out of the ball, that they're good offenses, and they're going to rely on their run game no matter who's in there. The Lions are one of those. I want all active running backs on their active roster. I want them all. If something were to happen to Montgomery and Gibbs, potentially Sione Vaki is going to, get a expanded role. Now they still have Craig Reynolds, who is questionable, by the way. I think he got maybe a concussion. They still have Craig Reynolds, who's been on the team for a couple of years. He seems to be the RB3. That being said, if Sione Vaki looks good, then he's going to get an expanded role if something were to happen to Montgomery and Gibbs or Gibbs. Into the wide receivers, Brian Thomas Jr. moving up from wide receiver 26 to 21, which is a pretty significant jump. Again, considering he was already near the top 25, to move up 5 spots is big. I'm kind of getting excited about Brian Thomas Jr. I'll be honest, like in terms of the potential first rounders to go or the first rounders that went in the NFL draft, I was a little bit lower on Brian Thomas than others. That being said, I'm kind of getting excited about him this year. Like he could have a year one impact. It's seemingly they're going to use him and Gabe Davis as the wide receiver in 2 wide receiver sets. And Christian Kirk is only going to be brought in 3 wide receiver sets. And there's a chance that Brian Thomas is just awesome. He's really good. And he takes over this wide receiver room as the alpha, right? Christian Kirk's a good, fine player. And I kind of like the value you can get for him in redraft. But that being said, he's not this alpha wide receiver that no one can take the starting role from. Brian Thomas could be that, man. I'm excited to see what he does with Trevor Lawrence, who hopefully can get things right and have a good season of, a 4,300, 35 touchdown season. We will see. Luke McCaffrey has moved up quite a lot from 77 to 65. A lot of this was not just the Dotson news, but it was, the news that he's coming into the facility super early with Jaden Daniels and they're building a relationship. That being said, be careful with Luke McCaffrey because the perception is that he has an opportunity now because the perception of the Commanders is it's Terry McLaurin and no one else. And what I'll say about these guys that if they do seemingly have an opportunity to do something and they don't, think of Quentin Johnston and how far he's fallen. Look at the difference between Quentin Johnston and JSN, for example, in terms of where they have fallen to. Quentin Johnston, who had 38 catches, 400 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 63 catches, 600 yards. So obviously a better season, but still disappointing. Look at their keep trade cut rankings, right? Look at the market feels about those 2 players. Jackson Smith and Jigba is still wide receiver 27, according to Keep Trade Cut. He's still a top 30 wide receiver asset. Quentin Johnston's wide receiver 81, guys. It's not like JSN had an amazing season and Quentin Johnston, he did have a bad season, but it's not like JSN had this amazing season. Why? Why did Quentin Johnston fall so much and JSN did not? One of the reasons is people didn't really like Quentin Johnston coming into the draft. The other reason was he seemingly, and he did, had the opportunity. Keenan Allen gets hurt. Mike Williams gets hurt. Quentin Johnston should step up. JSN didn't have that. He was playing in 3 wide receiver sets, but it was Metcalf and Lockett out there. Same thing with McCaffrey here. Just be careful because if McCaffrey doesn't produce this year, he's going to fall. His value is going to fall because the perception is, well, he should be the wide receiver 2 or 3 for this team now. And I don't know if that's the case. I think it's going to be Terry McLaurin, Dyami Brown, and probably Olamide Zaccheaus playing in the slot, at least to start the season. So keep that in mind with Luke McCaffrey. Jalen Polk from wide receiver 51 to 44. This is another interesting situation. I really hope they play Drake May sooner rather than later. Another interesting situation in the sense of they were using like KJ Osborne and Tyquan Thornton as their wide receiver 1 and 2. It wasn't Jalen Polk. And Demario Douglas was the slot wide receiver. So Jalen Polk was like maybe to start the year behind KJ Osborne. I hope that's not true. I really don't, but there's a case for that to be made. And he's kind of another one. If Jalen Polk doesn't do anything on a seemingly weak wide receiver room, he's going to fall. He will fall. I like Jalen Polk. I want him on my teams, but his value will fall if he doesn't do much, at least, especially in the first month or 6 weeks of the season, because we're just impatient people. Dyami Brown has moved up from wide receiver 136 to wide receiver 80, and I get it. I think he's going to be out there a lot for the Commanders this year. And if Jaden Daniels is the real deal, especially with his deep ball passes, that's kind of the role that Dyami Brown plays, is that deep stretch the field guy. Teams value that role, and they put players out there that can run these clear out routes a lot. Dyami Brown's going to be on the field a lot. Dyami Brown in best ball is going to be awesome. He really is. He's going to have 2-3 weeks there where he puts up, 3 catches, 120 yards and a touchdown. He will do it. I guarantee you. So best ball, I'm all over this, all over it. Andrei Iosivas from wide receiver 107 to 86. I made a video about this a while, I think maybe back in January. Like, hey, you should stash Andrei Iosivas. Maybe it was a little bit later, but I'm kind of saying like, hey, this guy has a chance. He has a chance. If they lose Boyd, they lose Higgins. They lost Boyd. They didn't lose Higgins. But, a lot of people are thinking, it's going to be Jermaine Burton. It looks like it's going to be Iosivas. Looks like Iosivas is going to be the wide receiver 3 for this team. And we've seen what the wide receiver 3 for the Bengals has provided over the years. At times, a start-worthy flex in Tyler Boyd. Now, Iosivas could be better than Tyler Boyd is. Iosivas obviously has injury upside with guys like Chase or Higgins getting hurt. So he's definitely a guy that, deservedly so, has risen quite a lot, about 40 spots. Or is that 30 spots over the last, I can't do math, 20 spots over the last month or so. Jalen McMillan, wide receiver 73 to wide receiver 60. He was always one of my late round targets in Dynasty rookie drafts, late 3rd, early 4th round pick. Really like Jalen McMillan. Think he's a very good player. That being said, here's what I want from Jalen McMillan this year. I think he's going to play quite a bit, kind of like what Trey Palmer was playing last year. I think he's going to beat out Trey Palmer for the wide receiver 3 role. Also, Trey Palmer did get nicked up, I believe. It's like an undisclosed injury. Don't know if it's serious or not. But here's what I want from Jalen McMillan. I don't expect much from year one because this team is going to funnel through Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Rachaad White. Those 3 players are going to get 80% of Baker Mayfield's targets. Throw in Cade Otton, who's going to get another, 13, 14%. And there's not much left over for everyone else. That being said, what I want to see from Jalen McMillan: 1, if there's an injury, I want to see him step up. 2, if there's no injury, I just want to see a couple moments, a couple games where it's like, holy crap, this is why Jalen McMillan is, a 3rd round rookie. This is Jalen McMillan 2025 and beyond to the moon type of plays. Something that, Jameson Williams or Quentin Johnston has never really provided us, right? I just want to see something. That's it. Just something, please. Just show me something this year, and I'll be in. 3 more wide receivers for you. Jalen Nailor, I won't make the joke. Jalen Nailor, I think is going to be the wide receiver 3 for the Vikings. I made a video after preseason week 1 saying, hey, this is a guy that maybe you should grab because he's their wide receiver 3. Obviously, you have Jefferson and Addison. Jalen Nailor is the wide receiver 3 on a good offense that, if something were to happen to Jefferson or Addison, could provide value. Rashee Rice, I probably should have put him higher up here. This is just funny. Like, back in March, April, I was telling people, like, whenever the Rashee Rice stuff came out, telling people, like, hey, why are we dropping Rashee Rice so much in Dynasty? I get it for redraft. If he's going to miss 4 games, that's significant. In Dynasty, why are we dropping him so much? Even if he does get suspended 3-4 games, that means nothing to me in terms of what we just saw from him. Now he's gone back up, right? I think at one point, I'm actually going to check this. I think at one point he was in like the 40s, like ranked as like wide receiver 40 at one point. Oops, I just clicked on Brendan Rice. Let's find Rashee Rice. Let's see where he fell to during the season. He fell as far as wide receiver 50. Are you kidding me, guys? 50? That's insane. I didn't know he fell that far. He fell all the way to wide receiver 50, and he's moved up to wide receiver 22. Why? Because he's not suspended 3 or 4 games? Is that really justifying him dropping 27 spots? Like, what are we doing? Always take advantage of these dips, man, if you can. That's crazy. I didn't know he got down to wide receiver 50 at one point. Insane. Jordan Whittington, guys, you've been following this channel. It feels like I mentioned this guy's name every video. I made a video on this guy back in May saying that you should stash him. Didn't hear anyone talking about him. Now everyone is. He's moved up 167 to wide receiver 79. That is an incredible jump. An absolute incredible jump. I think he could be the wide receiver 3 for the Rams. And I'd be very excited about that for sure. Okay, 3 tight ends. Not much to talk about here. Kylen Granson gets a bump, especially from Jelani Woods going on the IR. Kylen Granson could be interesting if the Colts ever decide to consolidate their tight end targets to one guy. You're going to get a startable low-end, top 15 tight end. But they don't. They use a rotation of guys. Kylen Granson, Mo Alley Cox. There's another guy there as well, who all those guys are still on the team, by the way. Just if he does get a little bit more of consolidated targets, he could be something. Peyton Hendershot. This is funny. This is the Kansas City bump. He moves up 7 spots because he went to the Chiefs. Okay. Do you really think he's going to overtake Kelsey, Noah Gray? They drafted a rookie. Jared Wiley. They drafted Jared Wiley. So this is nothing in my opinion. And then Ben Sinnott, should have put him at the top. Moving up only 2 spots, which at the top when you're already top 15 is slightly significant. I'm very curious to see, did we learn our lesson from Zach Ertz, who, by the way, is like in the exact same situation. Cliff Kingsbury offense. Zach Ertz is ahead of him. Did we learn our lesson from Trey McBride? I'm very curious to see with Ben Sinnott this year. Because if he does nothing, are people going to drop him like they dropped Trey McBride? Just so you guys know, Trey McBride at one point fell all the way down to tight end 22. Tight end 22, guys. And now he's tight end 2. Don't expect much from Ben Sinnott if Zach Ertz is healthy. That's what I'll say. Tight ends have to do a lot more than just catch. Don't overreact. If you don't see Ben Sinnott doing anything this year, don't worry about it. Don't sell low on him, please. Please don't. So there you have it, guys. Those are the biggest Dynasty risers over the last 30 days. Like and subscribe to the channel. Be on the lookout for the biggest Dynasty fallers and whether or not that's justified in tomorrow's video. We will catch you guys all then.